Serious. Redditors who witnessed a murder. What is your story? Deleted. Deleted. At a pub about 2 years ago. Large group out the front arguing. Then a guy got blindsided and punched in the side of the head. The guy that hit him sprinted off into the darkness. The guy went down and never got up. His wife watched it happen and was trying to get him to wake up while the fighting and arguing continued. 30 minutes go by and guy hasn't moved since being punched. Bar staff have been doing CPR on him for about 15 minutes before emergency services finally arrive and continue. Turns out he was brain dead on impact. They kept him alive somehow until the morning but turned life support off the following afternoon. The guy was 46. At his local bar and got killed. Heaps shit thing to see. I'll never forget that night. The guy that hit him was 19. Got charged with murder and is in jail as we speak. Edit. Some people are wondering why he got charged with murder and not manslaughter. In Australia we have a thing called coward punch laws. Basically if you blindside someone or hit them you get charged with murder. 8 years minimum. Personally, I believe he deserved a murder charge. Watching that man go limp and hit the ground and the attacker running away was one of the most sickening things I've ever seen. He came up behind him and punched the guy above his ear. He had no idea it was coming. Pretty much instantly made him brain dead. In front of his wife. No sympathy for the attacker here. I was at the grand opening of a sports bar the night that Manny Pacquiao fought Chris Algieri. The bar-in was jam-packed beyond belief, so packed that you couldn't get back to your table without shimmying through the other patrons, trying not to put your butt on the back of their necks. Anyway, a guy who had paid, entered and had some drinks went outside to take a smoke break. No smoking allowed in the bar. There was still an incredibly long line to get inside. So he tried to come back in the exit door. The bouncer told him he couldn't and that he would have to wait in line and come back in the main entrance. Though he didn't have to pay again. The guy was pissed and tried to push past the bouncer. The bouncer eventually pushed him out the door and locked it. The guy then apparently went back home, grabbed his girlfriend's gun and came back to the bar. I learned this after the fact talking to the owner and via news coverage. He waited until someone left out the exit door, snuck inside and shot the bouncer in the back of the head several times. The bar was so packed that chaos ensued. Almost everyone hit the floor immediately. There were tables, food, drinks, keys, phones and people all laying on the floor. Other people ran outside. My buddies and I waited for a few minutes until we knew the coast was clear and then got the hell out of there. At the time, we didn't know all of what had happened. As we exited the bar, we literally had to step over the dead bouncer to get to the door. I was lucky enough to find my phone and keys amid the melee. One of my buddies found his keys but not his phone. He never got it back. Sadly, that sports bar never really recovered from that incident. It closed down for about a month before reopening. But it never achieved the popularity that it should have due to that incident. I was riding my bike to work when I witnessed this attack. I was the first person to approach and I was sure this woman was going to die. I heard the truck before I looked. And I watched as she was run over completely with the truck. I watched as both sets of tires ran her over. It was and is the most horrible thing I have witnessed in my life. I was probably 100 to 150 feet away. And as soon as he pulled away I had to have an internal argument with myself about approaching, like I didn't want to see a dead mangled person up close. But if there was any chance she was still alive I didn't want her to be alone. It was probably only a few seconds. But it felt like forever and then I went over. She was alive. And conscious. I tried to comfort her and started calling 911. But she only spoke Spanish so I wasn't able to really communicate with her. Another woman had seen as well and she came running over from across the street. She was able to come over and talk with her in Spanish while I called 911. I think she was able to help her call some family since I think we were all uncertain if the woman would live. The ambulance showed up pretty quickly and stabilized her. After she was taken away I went to work. And tried not to think about it. I actually actively avoided learning anything about the story until now. Because the uncertainty of whether she died or not allowed me to believe she was okay. I didn't want to know if she died. This post actually prompted me to look up whether she lived or not. And this is the first time I've even tried to look up anything about that day. I'm happy she made it. And I hope she's doing well. Seeing someone try to kill someone changes you. I don't think about that day every day. But it definitely haunts me. This was when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. So late 80s. My friend's mom had picked us up from school in her station wagon and I was in the way back. There were probably 6 or 7 of us kids in the car and we were stopped at a traffic light across from a homeless shelter. About to get onto the interstate, this guy is walking down the street with an armful of chewing tobacco and drops a pack. A homeless guy leaning up against the wall picked it up. There was an angry exchange in which the guy refused to give back the tobacco, so the other guy kicked him and stomped him to death on the sidewalk. I was 16 driving down the highway in the passenger seat of my mom's car, about 3:30 p.m. Traffic came to a complete halt and we were in the right-hand lane. So as we're creeping along, a semi-truck appears on the shoulder of the highway. Door swung wide open. As we move past, there is a trail of blood down the doorstep onto the concrete and then leading about 20 feet further down the road. As we crept further, the trail of blood ended with a man lying face up completely covered in blood. There were no police or ambulances there yet. This was on a highway in the suburbs of a major metropolitan area in the US, so plenty of people saw before the scene was taken hold of by emergency services. Turns out the truck driver had a partner with him. They got into an argument and the passenger stabbed the driver like a dozen times and then escaped. The murderer was caught about an hour and a half away. One stayed over. 2 days later. I have to imagine that I was about 5 minutes behind the truck pulling over because the police can be in that spot in about 30 seconds. Being in the passenger seat in the right lane of the highway. I was about 10 feet from the body. Haunting image. Was walking home one day and saw a couple arguing. The dude started walking off away from the girlfriend's car. And apparently she was not happy with that. She proceeded to get in the car and wait about 5 minutes till he was way off down the sidewalk. I was walking on the opposite side of the road as him, and all of a sudden I see a blur and he goes flying like a rocket. She must have been going at least 60 miles per hour. He flew through the air and hit a tree. Died instantly. The lady then screamed out the window at his body and drives away. There was blood smeared all over the crumpled hood, and I'll never forget the sight of his contorted body at the base of the tree. Almost folded in half. I had to talk to the police and within the hour they caught her at a car wash, trying to clean the blood and chunks off the hood and grill of her car. I was 16 at the time. For those of you concerned, thank you. I actually did have to see a therapist for a few months after. I am doing very well right now. However, I don't think I'll ever fully get over it. It's one of those things that always sticks with you. In the parking lot of a strip mall in Washington state, a guy walked into a jewelry store and did an armed robbery. Plainclothes security guard waited until the robber exited and shot the robber in the back. I was in a car and I didn't hear the shot, but I did see him fall and some shoppers gathering around his body. We drove by slowly to see if help was needed. When I saw how fast the pool of blood was spreading, I pretty much knew he would not survive. Obviously a lot of led up to the story, but I'm not going there. My girlfriend was taking her dog for a walk while I got showered for work. I'm in the bathroom when I hear voices coming from outside. I look out the window and to my horror there is my girlfriend talking to her abusive stepfather, who is standing about 5 feet away from her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I knew it wasn't good. Stepfather raises his shotgun, shoots my girlfriend in the face, then shoves shotgun under his chin and pulls the trigger. Murder-suicide. Life's never been the same for me since. Lots of messages, so I wanted to say this. Thank you all for the support. It was 20 years ago, and though I'll never get over it, I can live with it. It took nearly 2 years before I came to realize there was nothing I could have done to stop it. I will never forgive her family for knowing what that man was doing to her, and they did nothing about it. I'm not really good with words, but I wanted to thank everyone for the kindness and support. Was going to work one day when a van hit a cyclist. Saw the person fly through the air. Looked like a mannequin. I kept talking to the body, but with blood coming from his ears. I knew he was dead. Unfortunately, they never released the name of the victim. I would have liked to have visited the grave. Some of the other witnesses were messed up. But I was, and still am, okay with it. I read that one's hearing is the last thing to go. If I am ever in that bad situation again, I will talk more conversationally.